This week, I had the honor to participate in the Ecumenical Advocacy Days in Washington, D.C., which brings together almost 1,000 Christians from across the United States and its territories to advocate for political change. I joined a group of 10 other Marylanders to lobby on behalf of SNAP benefits and the Senate's Farm Bill. Here's the language of the ask we were given. The SNAP program is a vital lifeline for over 42 million Americans, including people with lower incomes, individuals with disabilities, veterans, older Americans. As of 2020, over 180,000 Baltimore City residents, about 30% of the city's population, participate in SNAP. As people of faith, we urge Congress to protect the program from cuts and harmful policies like those proposed in the Limit, Save, and Grow Act of 2023, cutting funding, imposing harsh work requirements, limiting eligibility for certain groups will result in many of those people losing access to this vital program and further exacerbate food insecurity and hunger in America. SNAP is one such protective mechanism built into the sheep gate of our government. The new SNAP restrictions limit people such as veterans, LGBTQ people, lower income college students from receiving adequate benefits. These restrictions bring them closer to the edge of homelessness and the hunger cliff in a time when food and housing prices are skyrocketing. The choice to pay for groceries or rent is needless and cruel. Each policy is a choice that we make. Each threat to the safety net is a choice that we make. The last few weeks, Jesus has shown up in all sorts of unexpected ways, appearing through walls, sharing meals, showing up in disguise. But today, the lectionary takes us on a sharp turn from the road to Emmaus to the enigmatic Gospel of John, where Jesus describes who he is and what his ministry means. He opens with, "Very truly, I tell you." John uses this phrase to alert readers that Jesus is about to share something crucial. He begins to describe someone who enters the sheepfold when using the gate as a bandit or a thief. The person who enters the sheepfold using the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The sheep know his name and follow him out. A stranger may try to lead them, but the sheep will not obey someone they do not know. I want to focus on other pieces of the text this morning, but I would be remiss if I didn't pause to mention an important interpretive note here regarding anti-Semitism and white supremacy. Interpreters who understand the strange voices and the thieves and bandits as Jewish religious leaders pave the way for discrimination. They pave the way, and in the past have paved the way for mass murder, making supersessionist claims or claims rooted in the belief that Christianity supersedes Judaism has laid the religious groundwork for genocide. It can be hard to wade through a story so muddled by bad interpretation. But you all know me by now. And on our way to the good news this morning, we're going to take a hike through a little bit of history, through a place I like to call Nerd Mountain. We're starting with a womanist interpretation of a Greek word. Then we're going to spend some time with Aristotle, talk about Ezekiel's shepherds, and make our way back to John. Womanist scholar Dr. Angela Parker offers us a compelling retranslation of one word in this text, one word that unlocks the sheep gate in a new way. In verse 6, John pauses and explains to the audience that Jesus is using a figure of speech and that no one understood this teaching. The Greek word here is paroimia, which often translates for us as figure of speech, but it actually means lofty idea or veiled saying. The Gospel of John is full of veiled sayings and lofty ideas, It is full of oblique references and strange ideas and stories. Some scholars will equate John's strange ideas with the parables in Matthew and Luke. But just because Jesus talks about sheep in the other Gospels does not mean John is saying the same thing about them. In fact, John is much more like the wisdom literature of the Hebrew Bible, reminding us more of books like Proverbs, books like Ecclesiastes. In fact, even in the apocryphal book of Sirach, the words for parables and proverbs are entirely different. We usually overlook this detail because we don't go back to the source literature ourselves. Jesus is not making any morality claims in this piece of wisdom today. He's making a direct reference to a common political idea in the time in which he lived. He is not moralizing. He is showing us what a good leader looks like. 400 years before John wrote his gospel, Aristotle uses the exact same imagery to describe good political leadership. He was describing a good king when he said, "A ruler is a benefactor of his people, inasmuch as he devotes his whole talents to their welfare and tends them as a shepherd does his sheep." Now, I do want to point out that Aristotle also rags on the shepherds in another piece and calls them the laziest people who lead idle lives, wandering from place to place. So the idea that Roman political leaders could be metaphorical shepherds, while literal shepherds experiencing poverty were described in deeply negative ways, should not be something that we fail to mention or remember. But it does make the fact that Jesus uses this image even more revolutionary in the gospel. New Testament scholar Warren Carter makes the argument that the shepherd is an image for political leadership in the Gospel of John, and he's making a nod to Ezekiel, the prophet in the Old Testament. 200 years before Aristotle used that metaphor, Ezekiel did it first. The authors of Ezekiel wrote the entire 34th chapter in the first-person narrative, with Ezekiel speaking on behalf of God, with language for shepherding leadership. He spells out the entirety of what a good shepherd is or a good political leader looks like. Ezekiel writes that God will be the one and only leader who looks out for the people, that no one else and no other gods will do that for them. One verse in particular stands out that I wanted to share, verse 16. "I will seek the lost. I will bring back the strays. I will bind up the injured. I will strengthen the weak. The fat and the strong I will destroy. I will feed them with justice." That is 600 years of shepherd imagery, okay? The shepherd imagery reigns when it comes to good and just leadership. It is in the water, recognizable to this audience. Jesus says that the sheep will know the shepherd's voice and know that they are safe when they hear it. He stands as the gate, protecting and saving, guarding what the shepherd loves. During the Ecumenical Advocacy Days this week, we met with our representatives to advocate for them to be better shepherds. We met with Senator Ben Cardin's team, and I was struck by something in that meeting. In this meeting, the Good Shepherd was not the Senate staffer. It was the woman on our team who went off the script and talked about being a SNAP benefits recipient herself. She said her written piece and took a pause. With 60 seconds remaining in our meeting, she told a personal story about the power of SNAP to save the lives of her family members when she lost her job during the pandemic and could not afford to purchase medically necessary nutritious food for her mother and her daughter. SNAP kept her pantry and fridge full. If we had been in person instead of on Zoom this year, believe me when I say you could have heard a pin drop. So holy was that silence. Good shepherds call us out, like this woman, to seek the welfare of their people with love and care. They bind up wounds, they seek out the lost ones, they take necessary risks for the sheep that they love, but they cannot act alone. They cannot act alone in a field, running pell-mell after loose sheep, seeking a snack in another meadow, or fighting off a wolf pack with just a long stick in their hand. A good shepherd must also preserve the gate itself, because without a solid gate, all the work the shepherd has done to herd the sheep inside is completely meaningless. A good shepherd requires a good sheep gate. And this woman is a good shepherd. She was demanding the preservation of a sheep gate, not only for her family, but for others. Without Snap, she and those she loves are vulnerable to the wolves of the world: corporate greed, bloating prices, food apartheid. A good shepherd, even the best shepherds, can only do so much with two hands. A good Senate can only do so much with goodwill. The sheep gates of our communities must be our priorities. In this Easter season, Jesus reminds us of what it takes to protect and care for life of all kinds. He reminds us how fragile life is, how much it takes to love and protect it. Seek the lost. Bring back those strays. Stand up as the sheep gate.